I'd like to welcome my guest, Carlos Gutierrez, former Secretary of Commerce under George W. Bush, current chair of Albright Stonebridge Group. And if I was to go through his whole resume, I'd use all my time up. Thank you for joining me today, Chairman Secretary.
Good to see you.
Let's get right into it. Boy, I'll tell you what, the largest exporter in the world is surrounded by snakes in a way, picking fights with Australia. The Hong Kong power grab has turned many of the big economies that it does business with sort of against them. And, of course, they've changed some of the things that are ritualistic to the Chinese at this point in the year when they have their big get-together. They didn't create any growth targets. And, of course, there's lots of stimulus in the system, talk of around $500 billion. Is the world's largest exporter in trouble here, Mr. Secretary, in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, there's no question that there's a lot of decoupling going on. It's not just the U.S., but, Japan put $2 billion in their stimulus plan to bring companies back from China. So it's happening throughout the world. I think the most aggressive part is coming from the U.S. This move on Huawei, we've always considered that to be the nuclear weapon, the nuclear option. This started from a tariff war, and now it's decoupling, and it's spilling over into geopolitics. But just to bring it down to the ground level for your viewers, Rick, as of September 14th, any U.S. company that wants to sell to Huawei or wants to sell to a supplier of Huawei will need a Commerce Department license. If you're not selling to Huawei today, you'll need a license now. So that's going to, if not cripple Huawei, it's going to weaken Huawei in a very significant way. It's going to be a debilitated company. So that's why we've called that the nuclear option. The question now is, how does China retaliate? They've talked about an unreliables list, and that's where we've read names like Apple, Qualcomm, and others, even Boeing, where if you're on that unreliables list, then you really get bad treatment, and then your business is at risk in China. The question is, will China do that? Because it's not to their interest to see all this decoupling, and it'll be fascinating to see if they react that way or if they wait. What we know is that they're going to do a lot of forward buying so that after September 14th, they've got plenty of inventory at least to survive several months.
Now, Mr. Gutierrez, here's the thing. Everything you're outlining certainly seems to suggest that the Phase 1 deal agreed upon not that long ago is probably in trouble. But yet, yesterday, Economic Advisor Kudlow and the administration, and word from Mr. Lighthizer, that Phase 1 is still on track, even though there may be some subtle delays to COVID-19. And in the back of my mind, I think, well, at least part of that is things they need. They need food, but do you think they're going to continue to honor the agreement? Doesn't that speak volumes about how they may approach some of these issues you've just outlined?
Yeah, I think that's a real long shot. And, one option is that maybe the administration is using this move on Huawei as a tactic to get the Chinese to the table and get them to deliver on the Phase 1 agreement. It doesn't seem tactical. This seems like a continuation of the policy of decoupling. So I don't believe that this is intended to get Phase 1 moving. I don't believe that Phase 1 will come through as it was designed. So the Chinese are using a force majeure clause, which is COVID-19. So I would not get overly excited about Phase 1. I think there's so many bigger issues, and the relationship has been so stained that it's going to take a long time to get back to the table.
Now, Mr. Gutierrez, let's take a hypothesis here and be a little optimistic that science is going to come to the rescue sooner rather than later regarding the COVID-19. And from that perspective, and considering China and all the supply chains that may be in questionable future impacts, is it safe to say that onshoring could make up some of the difference in various parts of the economy that are going to be slow to be accepted by people at large? So whether it's big deals with new pharmaceutical arrangements by the government or onshoring and manufacturing, that those are going to make up some ground as the economy here slowly opens.
Yeah, there's no question. And some of the policies are intended to bring back manufacturing. pharmaceutical manufacturing. Even if you're a U.S. company, you can't sell to the U.S. government if you're importing from China. So that will force companies to come back. So yes, insourcing is a trend, and whether we can argue whether it's good or bad. I think the important thing is to recognize that it's happening and to understand how to manage through it. But we are going to see manufacturers come back, and that will create U.S. jobs. So there's no question that is the way of the world, and it's the U.S. doing it. So many other countries are doing it. So the international trading system, as we've known it, is really almost non-existent today.
And it's going to make many central banks quite happy, Mr. Gutierrez, because at the end of the day, I can't imagine on the backside of this onshoring movement that there's not going to be higher inflation. And considering all the debt that the U.S. and the world is creating, inflating their way out of it seems like the only solution. Is this all going to ultimately be a marriage made in heaven? Your final thoughts?
Well, I think in the short term, inflation is probably not in the cards. I would see more of a just a recessionary.
Oh, deflationary in the beginning. I get that. But I'm talking take a longer view.
Right. We have to deal, when we get out of this, we have to deal with a deficit that's higher than it's been since World War II. That is going to either crowd out money, it's going to create higher interest rates. You can't deal with something of that magnitude without creating some inflation. The amount of money in the marketplace is huge. As that velocity increases, we're going to have inflation. So yes, I would look at late 21, 22, 23 as periods of inflation.